Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world.
Hi, and welcome everyone to our next episode of Decoding AQ. I have with me today Alexia Michiels, who joins us from Switzerland, who's the founder and managing partner of the Resilience Institute in Europe, a position that you've had for over a decade, about 12 years. So welcome.
Thank you, Ross. Very happy to be here.
I've got to say, resilience is one of my most fascinating subjects that I've been learning about, reading about, and it is such a in vogue word right now. But I guess for you, it's been a word that's been in vogue for your world for many, many years. So why don't we start off with, where did you start your initial career, Alexia? Where did it all begin for you?
Nothing to do with resilience. I started in a very traditional way. After studying business management, I worked in marketing for Procter & Gamble, also in some media positions for the World Federation of Advertisers, for the TV station, RTL TVI in Belgium, where I'm from. And then in 2005, with my husband and my children, we had the opportunity to go and live in China. And this is actually where I shifted my career. We lived there for 5 years. And I met with the founder of the Resilience Institute, Dr. Sven Hansen. And this is how I started being interested with the topic of resilience.
It's amazing, isn't it, where our journey takes us in a tapestry that we can connect the dots when we look backwards, but trying to look forward sometimes, you just don't know what might show up for us in the world. And am I right in thinking that it was in New Zealand that it was originally kind of structured, and then it's now operating in a number of countries globally as the Resilience Institute? So tell me about that first meeting and what intrigued you to get involved.
Thank you for asking. And indeed, Dr. Sven Hansen, although he's originally from South Africa, he migrated to New Zealand, where he still lives. And this is where he started 20 years ago, the Resilience Institute. He felt that there was a need in companies to mobilize better all of our resources, body, heart, mind, and spirit, to face the challenges of modern business life. Although he's a doctor, he was convinced that modern medicine would not be sufficient to really face daily challenges of corporate life with success. And that's how he started the Resilience Institute, with an approach that was and still is integral, recognizing the interactions between all of our dimensions, but also evidence-based. And this is really important. Everything is based on research, neuroscience, biology, physiology, positive psychology. And third, very important dimension, it is super practical. And this is probably what brought me really willing to work with him, because I felt if we want to have an impact in the corporate world, we need to bring something very practical that people can integrate in their daily routine, going beyond the concepts, beyond the ideas, but inviting people to translate some good sense ideas into practical behaviors. So I started working with him 1 year in China, and then we felt, well, there is a need to develop such an activity in Europe. And we moved back to Europe, settled in Switzerland, and they started the Resilience Institute Europe.
It's interesting, isn't it, where we can be intrigued, and often things exist in academic concept, in research, in science, and that crossing the chasm into something that's practical, that you can really get your hands dirty with and see an outcome in a business context, in a business setting, is no easy thing to do. And I think one of the things we're finding is, how do you take some great work, great research, great science, and land it into the busy, complex things that are humans in work, that shifts, that the environment shift, that all of those things. So you were intrigued, you spent this time beginning in China. Do you speak Chinese?
A tiny bit, because when you lived in China, during that time, you had to learn Chinese, because the English definitely not spread. So I had no alternative than learning oral Chinese.
Yeah. And I guess all of the different components of culture show up differently for how the society views the meaning even of resilience, and how it can show up in their work, of whether this is a good trait, a bad trait, something we can learn, how do we improve it, how does it work from individual to team to organizational, and all of these moving parts that will be way beyond just one person's life's work, but many people's life's work.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more then about when you embedded it and started in Switzerland for Europe, the Resilience Institute, that's now some of the key highlights from that start to now releasing a book, the Resilience Quotient book that you've just released, which we'll dive into a little bit, but give me a few highlights of what happened on that journey.
Well, sure. And maybe before sharing about what happened in Switzerland, I would like to go back to China, because one of the reasons why I felt we definitely have a methodology, an approach that is very powerful, is when I realized that we would touch people equally, whether they would come from the US, from China, from Europe. So what we proposed was something so deeply human that it goes beyond cultural differences, because it touches human biology. And now coming back to Switzerland, indeed, now it's nearly 12 years ago when we started the Resilience Institute in Switzerland, talking to companies in Europe. The topic of resilience was not very widespread, and many people felt, well, this is probably something that organizations having time can dedicate resources to. And actually some leaders felt already more than 10 years ago that, well, actually, there is something here. We need to also equip our people to be able to face whatever happens with calm, with success, to use their resources with more agility, with more diligence, to really develop what we call these resilience competences. What we do with our own resources, intrapersonal skills, but also interpersonal skills, how we interact with others. And that goes clearly beyond your technical skills. So that brought us our first clients. And then progressively, the topic became more and more critical. And with the pandemic, suddenly it became a priority. So, of course, that impacted very much our work, because we had also to shift and propose our programs all online, whereas before it was very much face-to-face, workshops, conferences, etc. But then we realized that there is a lot we can do through online training and accompanying organizations to progressively develop a culture of resilience. And today's world confirms that it remains extremely relevant.
And one of the key pieces at the moment in the narrative that's showing up in a few things is around how an environmental change then impacts a work behavior. So the pandemic's come along and everything shifted. And now we've got this friction point between return to work, i.e. bounce back to the way it was, versus no, there's a new way of doing things. How do we actually bounce forward and learn from that piece and not regain what actually probably didn't work for many people? We just didn't realize it. That it's opened our eyes. So in this sort of basic understanding of bouncing back from adversity to actually shifting to a point of thriving in challenge, to thrive whatever the situation is, what are some of the key things that you've seen inside leaders or their mindsets that can help them make that shift from, we've got to, hold on to something and get back to it and use all of my coping, use all of my resilience muscles to do that, versus I let go of that and I'm shifting into a new direction? Take me through some of that dynamic and where you've seen it in practical terms work really well.
Right. Well, the definition we have about resilience is precisely bouncing forward. So it is facing the adversity, learning from the challenges, and go to somewhere where you have learned from that adversity and you feel stronger after the shock, after the crisis versus before. It's not about coming back to the same state. So if we refer to the pandemic, this increased awareness about the world as it is, about the interdependence between the different stakeholders, leads the best leaders to consider that, well, they have to learn from what has happened so that now they feel more ready to apprehend future challenges as well. It's about indeed recognizing their role in a world that is changing, that is constantly changing, and recognizing as well that as a leader, they can have an influence in a zone of influence, which is larger than for many people. So when you recognize that the impact you have on your zone of influence is a way to make the world move progressively towards a better direction, then you're tempted to make better choices, more conscious decisions. So to answer your question a bit more directly, I would say that the awareness that has been triggered by the pandemic has led the best leaders to look at their role differently and to reconsider the impact they have on all stakeholders, not just on their clients, not just on the financial results, but recognize all stakeholders.
So it's that permission to reimagine. It's a gift that's come along to maybe reconsider, what do I want within my team, and what would I like in the wider context of the hive mind that is an organization and then within an industry. I wonder, is it something in your experience that we can actually run out of? Say, if we're getting setback after setback after setback, is there a point at which we reach exhaustion, we reach burnout? My resilience tank is empty.
Yeah.
What's the situation of, what are maybe some of the early signs that might be happening if it does happen? And then what can we do about it?
Well, and you're right. I think after the pandemic, many tanks tend to be a bit empty. But what is also important is to recognize that resilience is important to bounce forwards from challenges, but also to thrive, even when things go well. So we invite everyone to be more aware about how they can mobilize their resources, even when things go fine, because that gives you a strength. It's a way to cultivate your ongoing resilience, I would say, so that you feel better equipped when there is indeed adversity coming on your way. And indeed, you're right, when you're facing adversity after adversity, it may drain your energy. And this is why it is so important to secure your resilience foundations. And what we believe are the resilience foundations are mainly composed of your physical energy and your ability to keep calm despite pressure. So everyone can wonder, okay, how good am I in keeping calm despite pressure? How good am I in rejuvenating regularly enough during my busy day? How good am I to take good care of my physical vitality? How about my sleep? How about my exercise? And we do believe that when people are more conscious and secure their resilience foundations, they are definitely better equipped to continue thriving, whatever may present.
And I guess it's that ability to be at peace under pressure, to be able to have coherence between our signals in our body. So the way in which we get this amygdala hijacking when we get an adversity of something strange that comes in, hits us, and we are degraded in our cognitive decision-making because that's the way we're wired. To actually, how do we control that through being in sync, through breath work, being able to be, as you say, deal and be calm under pressure? How does that work from the words we're saying, right? And we can imagine it, we can read it and think, yes, I'd love to do that, Alexia. I'd love next time I get a, big, slap in the face of something unexpected. To then in the real moments of it, what are some of the practical things we can do that shift from the idea to actually get us into that state of resilience foundation that you talk about?
Well, I may refer to a recent study that we're about to publish. We have a resilience diagnostic at the Resilience Institute. It is a self-assessment, a questionnaire that people complete before starting a program with us. And then we also have a post-program. And we have had that tool for over 8 years, but every 2 or 3 years, we do data crunching to check all the data we are accumulating and identify some insights. And we have just finished the analysis of the last 3 years of data. That includes the pandemic period. And that is leading to really interesting insights about what are the key drivers of resilience. How practically can we consider doing some things differently? And just to give you an example, what we do is isolating those people, the 10% of people who have the best scores of resilience, as it is measured in this tool, and identify what do they do differently. And what we could see is that among the factors where they have the highest difference versus the other people, number one is sleep. In other words, those people having the best scores of resilience tend also to be those sleeping the best. So as you are asking, what can we do? I would respond very pragmatically, well, secure your sleep. Fix your sleep if this is an issue for you. And we know that this is an issue for many people. Find out what are the adjustments you can make so that you tend to sleep better. So number one is sleep. There's also two important factors that I'm happy to highlight. Second one is focus, your ability to control your attention. We can clearly see that those people who tend to be really good at bringing their attention in the present moment, having the mind where the task is, tend also to have higher scores of resilience. But it means that if you train that ability, and there are many tools to train your ability to bring your attention to the present moment, that will support your overall resilience. That can be done through mindfulness, meditation, but there are also other techniques that have that same objective. And there's a third one, which is also worth considering, which is relaxation. And this is not common in our Western society to recognize that relaxation, well, is actually a competence. And what we do suggest and observe from our data is that when people are able to regenerate regularly through simple techniques, it can be a breathing technique, taking micro breaks, doing some visualization exercise, even doing a short period, just a few minutes can be helpful. When you're able to do that regularly, that tends to support your overall resilience competence as well. So you see, there are definitely practices that you can integrate in your daily routine that will support your overall resilience.
It's fascinating and interesting because I've had so many conversations with people who have all their different little areas, whether their specialism is in motivation or in resilience or all these different components. How often sleep comes up as such a gift for us. And I changed my relationship, Alexia, with sleep when I read Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep book. And I must have bought maybe 40 copies of that book, and I've gifted it to all the people I care about. And it went from sleep getting in the way of all the work I did to now sleep is the work. So really focusing on that to be able to do great creativity, great all sorts of things. And I want to share with you, I got given one of these Aura rings back in 2018. And so I've tracked my sleep since 2018. And it's why I wear these glasses to try and help with my circadian rhythm. I control the temperature in my bedroom. I mean, I've gone really geeky to try and work on not only sleep quality, the sleep types, but also my HRV, so my heart rate reliability and variance. And that as being a core trigger of our nervous system readiness to be able to be, like you say, resilient. So that piece I can fully, from my own personal experience, let alone reading it in some research paper, how calm I feel after good sleep, after continual good sleep, and equally the balance of being able to breathe and breathe well. How, we're not ever really trained how to breathe. It's just, it's a natural thing. We just do it. Or do we really practice it? Do we take that? And the last point I want to make is relax. And that observation, we had dinner with a couple of friends of ours, my wife and I recently, and he's quite an insightful, very to the point chap. And he made an observation about my wife, Karen, who's currently going through treatment for cancer, and said, you lead such a busy world. Your body has no room for relaxation and then recovery to heal. And you heal in the, in the relaxation mode. And for years, we've been together many years, and she can't relax, can't just sit and relax. So if somebody says in that case, I want to relax, but I can't, tries meditation, tries these various things, what other things have you seen that work well for somebody when they read, okay, better sleep, yeah, I can follow some tips on there. Right, I want to be able to relax, I want to be able to breathe. What are some of the things for busy leaders, busy people in work to integrate this? How does it work, Alexia?
So, well, Ross, let me give you maybe just two informations I want to share. First, about sleep. Matthew Walker is amazing indeed. And he's the one who said that sleep is your superpower. He also says, and I think it's a very nice reminder about the impact of sleep on mindset. He says, the bridge between despair and hope is very often a good night's sleep. The bridge between despair and hope very often is a good night's sleep. And I think it's so true and so important to keep in mind. Now, about your question, relaxation, there is no one size fits all. So I think it is very wrong to tell people you should meditate, you should try mindfulness, you should go to yoga class. It's really up to everyone to find out what tends to give me a relaxing feeling. And that will be different for your wife versus for my husband, for myself. But if you start questioning yourself, then you will find out. And for your wife, maybe it is when she walks with the dog. For my husband, maybe it will be when he listens to nice music. And for myself, it may well be when I practice yoga. But if you find out what tends to bring me a relaxation feeling, then the discipline is make sure you have enough of these moments in your busy week. Make sure you schedule these moments in your busy days. And recognize that you do not need long practices to have benefits. And coming back to breathing, because I personally find that this is one of the most underused tools that we have at our disposal. 1 minute of calm, deep breathing, conscious breathing, may be just enough to calm yourself. It tends to calm your physiology and therefore calm a busy mind.
So I've got another question for you. So many of the big houses, McKinsey, World Economic Forum, even LinkedIn, are saying, right, number one, resilience and adaptability. So we're told this is something to have, something we need. You've built for more than a decade, and since the late 90s, this institute has existed for resilience. What are some of the outcomes for people and organizations who have high resilience? So whilst you need to have it, it's there because the change is always happening, this is happening, pandemic, etc. What's some of the real tangible business outcomes of why leaders should not go, oh, that's interesting, to this is critical, to I'm investing in this because of this outcome that I'm going after? What are some of those outcomes, and where have you seen that manifest in reality?
Sure. So we do believe that resilience is a strategic asset for an organization. We have mentioned a few tips that can help people to feel more resilient, better equipped. But of course, at the end of the day, an organization is also looking at having the right persons on board to fulfill its mission. And when people are more resilient, they are more ready to fulfill the mission of the organization. In other words, when you have more resilient people in an organization, that supports a more resilient organization, being agile, ready to change, ready to honor its reason for being. And if I may just add another point here, I really believe that organization's role is changing. An organization's role has to be considered in a context, like a leader's role has to be considered in a context. The leader of today does not live and work in the same context as my dad when he was a leader 50 years ago. So I truly believe that a leader needs to understand how the world is evolving and recognize that today's organization have a role to play to accelerate the transition to a different world, a world that takes into account the societal and the environmental challenges. And with this in mind, I believe that in an organization, when you value, cultivate these resilience competence, you make more people more aware of themselves. It's a way to make them aware of their internal ecosystem. And when people are more aware about their internal ecosystem, their personal resources, they tend to be more open and receptive to pay attention to the external ecosystem in the organization and beyond. And this is why we do believe that resilient people support resilient organizations, and resilient organizations will support a more resilient planet. The more we'll have resilient organizations, the more they will make conscious choices and responsible decisions to progress towards a more resilient planet, if that makes sense.
It does. And I guess this cycle from collapse to survival to growth to thriving to then collapse. And as it goes round in that cycle in ways of whether it was a belief, a behavior, a piece of technology, a product or service that one organization has, how they evolve it through that cycle of change. So in real terms, if I am a HR leader or I'm an innovation leader or I'm a CEO in an organization, I'm listening to this, I'm hearing it, is this going to shift challenges I'm facing right now? For example, the great attrition, I'm losing talent. Will this help me with that? I want to make sure I'm still relevant in the world where everything's changed and I need to drive innovation. Maybe even before attrition, I've got engagement and performance issues where there's a disconnect from purpose. Where does it flow? Does it answer all of those? Is there one that you've seen in the decade that you've been working in that you would say, this is the real focus, this is where I would recommend solving this problem rather than 20 different problems it could solve? Which one do you think it's best aligned to in an organization?
Well, it would be probably a bit too ambitious to say it solves it all. Although I tend to believe that it really helps in many of the current challenges. And it really comes back to create more meaning and more trust in organizations. So talking about the great resignation, it's a lack of meaning, a lack of trust. And maybe to come back to what I shared with the study about to be published, based on this more than 20,000 diagnostics, I mentioned sleep. I did not mention, I should have, that fulfillment is also one of the key factors of resilience. When people, generally speaking, feel more fulfilled, they tend also to be more resilient. And that's an opportunity for organizations to create an environment, a working environment that contributes to making people feel fulfilled. And trust that when people are fulfilled, they will be more resilient to face challenges that may present. And this is actually a huge challenge considering the younger generation, the younger professionals, looking for meaning in their work. If they do not find it, they will suffer, and it may well lead them to decide to leave the organization. So organizations need to create that environment where people feel supported, recognized as a whole human being with aspirations, with emotions, and of course, with the ambition to perform. And at the Resilience Institute, we do believe you can perform with care. This is not a tension. You cannot just either perform or care for people, care for the planet. No, you can actually, by building your resilience, perform with care. And when I say care, I mean caring for yourself, for the others, and for the planet.
Yeah. Is that sustainable and systemic care that you're leaving a trail of bridges, not a trail of fires, in terms of as we go forward? One of the other areas that I'm always intrigued by is the paradox of thinking. What's the opposing thought? Where is resilience bad? Where's the dark side? Where's the shadow of it? Is too much of it a bad thing? What might happen if we have too much resilience? In all of your experience, have you seen any of this? Do you tussle with it in your mind of when you don't pull out the resilience foundation and there's another one that gets pulled out? That is those things. So what's the dark side of resilience, if there is one?
I think it's about how you approach it. And that's a call for humility. Well, no one has a recipe to enjoy life, be perfect, and feel that we have everything we need to solve all problems of the world. And resilience will not solve it all. So it's really a question of being humble enough to recognize we are on a journey. So as we talk about building resilience, cultivating resilience, it's an ongoing life journey, which I find actually interesting. It's never done and achieved. It is a way of thinking. It's also being able to recognize that there are moments that are tougher than others. Being resilient, it is not about being at the top at all times. It is not about being happy all the time. It is about navigating life in general, your career in particular, this current global situation with calm, with confidence. So I do not believe there is a dark side of resilience if you approach it with humility and with confidence, trusting that whatever brings you on that path will be beneficial, not just for yourself, but also for others, and ideally as well for the planet, because it brings you to more awareness about your decisions, your actions, and your choices.
I guess it's like all of these things, it's about the context and perspective. How are we leveraging this through us and experiencing it through us and releasing it from within? And one of the other questions I get asked a lot is, and I want to get your view, is what's the difference between grit and resilience?
Well, there is a difference. Grit is perseverance. Well, I can do this, I will do it, and I will certainly not give up. Well, resilience invites you to sometimes actually let go, to sometimes may well give up on something that may not be the most important thing. And it's also about recognizing the importance of practices. Mindset is important. We have talked a lot with Carol Dweck's book about growth mindset, very important, very relevant. But let's all remember that our practices tend to be more impactful than grit. So if you want to change something, if you want to create a habit, research has demonstrated that motivation, grit, perseverance, yes, it matters. But what matters the most is your practice, your inner motivation, remembering why you want to do this, and also having some support around you. People will encourage you. So it's not just all about grit and perseverance. It's really about practices, feeling supported, and remembering the meaning of your decisions.
That's really helpful. And another question, and you inferred a little bit of it earlier, but is resilience like a virus? If I have a lot, do people around me benefit from that? And can I then top up other people's resilience tanks if in a context of a team, there's a variety of people at different levels? Is there a collective resilience effect? And whether your data shows anything around that, or maybe your just views of the viral nature of this trait that we're now all going to go after by sleeping better, by breathing better, and doing intentional work.
Well, what we
the
research we have at the Resilience Institute interestingly shows that when you look at an organization, the resilience of an organization measured with the diagnostic we have will never be higher, or very rarely be higher, than the resilience of the leadership team. So it really shows that leaders set the tone. So the way you manage challenges, your behaviors, your attitudes in a team, in an organization, tends to really influence greatly the attitudes, behaviors that will dominate in that team or in that whole organization. So I think it's a really an opportunity for all leaders to recognize that, well, in a certain way, it is contagious, because your way of managing adversity, of behaving on a day-to-day, will have an impact on people around you. We also know that emotional contagion happens. So if people experience positive emotions, they tend to trigger positive emotions around them. So we can suspect that when people develop these resilience competences, if they are a bit vocal about these practices that support their resilience, that will be exemplary. It will encourage people to start also trying out and finding what could work for them. So we also encourage very much in organizations people to talk about these topics, to be a bit vocal about what works for them, because then there is really a momentum that can be created.
Two more things to finish off, because I know that if I don't keep an eye on the time, we'll be hours in, because this really does fascinate me. What would be the key takeaway learning that you're wanting somebody who reads your book to come away with? So if I took that book, I read all about the Resilience Quotient, and I understood this, feeling of how leadership can have heart and purpose at the same time, and it's not tension, it's in flow of each other. What's the key takeaway from that book?
Well, I would say first, it's awareness is necessary but not sufficient. You need to translate awareness in practices. This is why at the end of my book, you have a practical menu with really simple things that can make a difference. And then maybe second is recognizing that as we recognize the importance of what I call the resilience quotient, building these resilience competences, it really brings you to the importance of cultivating a healthy relationship with yourself so that you can cultivate healthy relationships with others, which we believe are absolutely critical to cultivate a healthy and constructive relationship with the environment at large. So it's really about managing our relationships at these three different levels: yourself, the others, the environment. Remembering the importance of meaning, purpose, which is very important in today's world, finding meaning in a world that is turbulent, and recognizing as well that everyone in his or her zone of influence can take his part in the environmental challenges. And that's also, for me, also being resilient, is being a responsible actor.
That's really valuable, isn't it? To know that in these circles of influence, of how we influencing ourselves, the people around us that we spend our most time with, and the environment that we are leaving behind for future generations, all of these things are around deliberate choice, and that we have an opportunity to influence that is I think a kindred spirit of us both. For me, it's so important that we consider anything is a choice. Whatever happens is there to serve us through a perspective and mindset, and therefore how can we use those gifts to reevaluate and to have better harmony, better relationships with all living things and all bits around us. And my last piece is a question I ask everyone, and it's really around the subject of change, adaptation, curiosity, and it stems from one of my first interviews with Dr. Diane Hamilton, who wrote about the Curiosity Code, and how in 5 years of age, we're at our most curious. And as we go through life, we tend to be less curious, ask less questions, stay in our little echo chambers of the people we like, the news channels we like, the noises we like to hear that are familiar. When was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
Okay, that's a nice question. I love it. And I also believe very much in the power of curiosity. I believe it is a factor of longevity. The more you learn, the more it stimulates your curiosity, and it's good for you, it's good for your mind. Well, last time I did something new, it's really hard to say, so it's not a good illustration of what I just shared. What I can just say is that this year, I decided to swim in the lake. I said I live by the lake in Lausanne, in Switzerland. And I decided to swim in the lake all year round. And I can promise it becomes very cold during the winter. But this is my first year that I do it. So nearly every day, except when I'm traveling, I go to the lake 5 minutes. And I did it actually yesterday, 5 minutes. And actually even this morning, 5 minutes. And it's actually getting a little bit warmer. Today it was 7 degrees. And yesterday it was 6.8. So spring is definitely there. But that's answering your question. This year I'm trying this. It's doing it all year round. And this is a challenge that I enjoy.
I love it. And shifting something intentionally from a first time into a habit. How do we leverage, the BJ Fogg or the Atomic Habits or of these things of taking a practice in that is novel and new, and then we habitualize it, and then we reevaluate, is it serving me or not? Go for something novel and new. Absolutely wonderful. Alexia, if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way they can reach out to either you or the Institute? How can they get in touch?
Well, maybe you can include the details somewhere on the webcast, on the podcast, but they can certainly reach out through me via the Resilience Institute website, which is resilience-institute-europe.com. I'll share with you the address. Also very happy to have email. I'll share my email address. And I think the book is easily accessible. You can go and check. It's Resilience Quotient, Leadership with Heart and Purpose.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you more. I'd love to work out how we might be able to get a number of your books out to our community as well. So in the last year, we've certified about 150 coaches and consultants around the world. And so this is meaningful work. We want to expand the work that we're doing in order that as people go through change, their relationship with change and adaptation can be one of joy, not of dark and sharp objects. So
Wonderful.
Thank you for the work that you've been doing. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQ-Me assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favourite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.